What's happening, everybody? It's Eric J. Olson from Array Digital coming at you live again for another great episode of Lunchtime Live. And today I have the pleasure of hosting Jose, who is the author of the book Value Prop, and he's also the CEO of the company Value Prop. What's happening, Jose?
Hey, good to be here, Eric.
I appreciate your time. So, hey, actually, we chatted a little bit beforehand about your process and the company, but I should have warned you about this, but I wanted to kind of back up a little bit to the book process, because I'm actually going through that process right now myself. But what kind of made you think about writing the book, and is that something that took a little while for you to kind of like do? And then, did you already have the company before you wrote the book? Can you just kind of explain how that all?
Great question. So I like to say the book, was like, 40 years in the making, right? So, but not exactly. Just, it's a lot of experiences, and what led to the forming of the company, Value Prop, was the idea of linking together strategy, marketing, and sales, thinking about that as a continuum, especially for smaller companies where it's the same person, right? If you're an owner of a company, if you're an entrepreneurial owner, you're going to do strategy, you're going to do marketing, you're going to do sales. You may have people help you with that, but you own it. And so I wanted to really get at the essence of what that was. And so I did a lot of research as I started the company about close to 15 years ago, started doing some really interesting projects. And I said, wow, there's something here that I think I'd like to get to a wider audience, and hence the book. So I started writing the book, organizing my thoughts. And that was probably about a 2-year process of getting some writing help as well, to actually have somebody who can capture my ideas, help me organize it so I can run a business, raise a family, and write the book. And while I was doing that, I was also finishing up my MBA at Villanova. So it was a busy time in my life, but it was a lot of fun, and definitely something I feel like, if nothing else, I can say I got that done, and it was pretty exciting, and I've used it ever since as part of the business.
That's great. It sounds like a very busy time of your life, going to graduate school, married, writing a book, and starting a company or running a company.
Yeah, well, it's funny because you think, and people have gone through it, they think, okay, what am I going to do when I finish one of these? You're going to have all this time, but it's funny how activity will just expand to occupy whatever time you have. It's just a natural order thing. So we're all busy, and we continue to stay busy, which is good. So
yeah, but busy with something to show at the end of it is very important, right? Like the book.
That's true. Absolutely. Yeah. And again, I think that's part of life. You always want your life to have some purpose. And, in fact, it's funny, our tagline for the business is business growth on purpose. And simply thinking that, or reflecting on the fact that very often I engage with owners and companies where they desire growth, but they haven't really taken the time to take the steps to do it on purpose. It's kind of like it's supposed to just happen, or maybe it did for a while. They used to get a lot of, leads or organic references and things like that. But if you really want to drive growth, you have to be pretty intentional about it.
Yeah. I came to that realization at the end of 2020, where we had set a very aggressive growth goal for ourselves at the tail end of 2019. And, we just kept kind of missing the mark. And before we knew it, we were way off the mark. And I also realized that I just hadn't put enough emphasis into what we were going to do to enable that change. So it's very, very easy to set a goal, but in order to actually achieve it, you have to take some action. It's just not going to happen organically.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, look, every now and then, anybody who's been in business for any length of time, you get that, serendipity comes in and the phone rings, and it happens to be somebody remembers you from 10 years ago, and it turns into a great opportunity. But like they say, hope is not a strategy. So that's not a strategy. That's right. Like, okay, that's fortuitous, but it's not strategic growth.
Yep. So we have a couple of comments. First is from Daniel Keever, who is the person who connected the two of us.
Yeah.
So, Daniel used to be, he started off as an intern here at Array Digital, and then he became a full-time employee. And then one sad day, he told us that he was moving back home and you couldn't work here anymore. And frankly, this was way before COVID, and way before the period of time where we were very, very comfortable hiring people that were not here, working locally in
Right.
this office. I wish I would have kept him.
Yeah,
Good
he's
guy.
great.
So he's doing some work
No,
for you now.
right. Your loss, my gain is how
I'm
it kind of
telling you.
works out, so it's all good.
Great guy. Thanks a lot, Daniel. I appreciate it. And then we've got a comment here from Tim. Hey, bud. Good to see you too. Thanks for joining in. So for everyone who is watching right now, if you have any questions at all about anything that we're talking about, or the book Value Prop, or any of the content that comes up, feel free to just comment on whatever platform that you're watching, and I will see it here, and we can bring it on screen, just like Daniel's comment here, a reunion tour. That sounds fantastic. I love the idea.
That's right.
Well, cool. So, all right. So you started the company. Was it always called Value Prop?
No, it's interesting. Its original name was a G2M Group. So go to market group, right? That was the idea of it. And so started under that name. It wasn't the best name I ever came up with, but it was functional. And but then as I wrote the book, and I said so much of everything really centers on not a fancy tagline, but actually what I call the true truth of your business. Like, who do you really serve? What value did it really get out of it? And do you understand it? And unless you do, really, both those dimensions, you're never going to articulate it well in whatever platform. So I would see too many small businesses try to do things like Nike. So they wanted to have like just do it type taglines. I said, well, to your audience, they're never going to understand that because it's not self-explanatory. It's not, especially if you're like in an industrial category or professional services. I like taglines, or if you're going to get down to a tagline, that are a little bit more on the nose, because you're only getting an audience of, average small business website, maybe at best a few thousand visitors a month. You really have to make it count. They're looking for something like engineering services. So say something about engineering. Don't say dream it with us or something like that, which, what the heck does that mean? Dream it with you. Are you selling mattresses? It's unclear. So those are things that got me very excited around really focusing on how to create that core value and build out from there. And it just started making sense. People started identifying the company with Value Prop, and it's a good thing to own. And I come originally from the tech space where everybody, before it was popular, before all the Shark Tank type things came out, it was very routine going way back. People say, what's a value prop? What's the value prop for that? So I kind of grew up professionally in an environment where that was an accepted term. And so it was kind of cool that I was able to snag it for myself, for my company, valueprop.com. And so we've been going since then.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. It's and then you renamed the company to Value Prop.
Yes, absolutely.
After the book came out, or
Yep.
around the same time?
No, just like simultaneous.
Just like that. Yeah. I think it's a good idea for people to just pick a name that they think is going to work, and then start the company, because a lot of young entrepreneurs, or people who are just starting, it pains them to come to a decision about so many different things, and there's just a lot of decisions that have to be made. And so the company name, yes, you want to have a good name, and you certainly don't want to have a bad name, but in the end, Nike, is that by itself, without the brand behind it? Is Nike itself a good name? eBay, Walmart, are these good names? GE? Nah. Right. The brand means a lot more. And so that's something that can be cultivated over time, I believe. And you can rebrand yourself, which I've done many times. So.
Oh, absolutely. Well, like, Jack Trout, who wrote with Al Ries, wrote Positioning, right? The Bible for most modern marketing, written like 40 years ago, still holds up. But he talked about brands. He said, books.com was not the number one bookseller. Shoes.com was not the number one bookseller. It was Amazon, Zappos, and so on. There's many, many examples like that. You give meaning to your words. I mean, the word shouldn't be something that's off-putting. Certainly shouldn't be offensive in any language you plan on doing business in. You got to check that these days. But it has to be somewhat memorable, something people can actually leave having met you or read about you and say, yeah, that company was, and so on, right? And then it has to actually be consistent, but doesn't have to be on the nose. Mine happened to be on the nose because I had an opportunity, and actually there's a little story there, because I said, gee, it'd be great if I could get valueprop.com. I went online and it wasn't available. It was taken, but it wasn't being used. Yeah. So I used a bid service to go after it, and we kept on going back and forth. And one Sunday morning I was driving to church, and I got a text Shouldn't do this. Don't recommend it. But I actually read the.
You're probably at a stoplight.
Yeah, I was at a stoplight. That's what
Yeah,
it was.
yeah.
And they said they took my bid, and it was like $500. And I said, done. Like just done. I'll never, to get something that's like a, basically 8-9 character word that is actually a word is rare. And so that's that story there.
No, that's really cool. I'm just curious. Did you go through GoDaddy for that? Because I know.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Domain buy. I've used it a few times pretty successfully. It doesn't always work. But if you approach somebody, I just wrote a book called Value Prop, and I want the domain valueprop.com. I'm not getting it for $500
No,
at that point.
No. Yeah,
so,
exactly. Yeah, and it's really best to like have someone else contact them if you can.
Absolutely.
Not a lawyer, right? It's just
exactly. Right, because that may not get responded to, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I've tried them at least once, maybe twice, and it didn't ever go anywhere. But that's really interesting to hear that it actually went somewhere for you. I had a similar situation like long time ago, early 2000s, where there was a website domain that I wanted, and this was so early on that I contacted the owner. And I was able to buy it at cost. Like that's unheard of these days.
Right.
Like
they didn't even know. Right.
Yeah. You don't buy a .com these days at cost. That doesn't happen. So.
That's for sure. Wow.
Well, cool. So let's hear a little bit about value prop and kind of like how deep you go into a company. And this is really interesting to me because my background and Kevin Daisy, our co-founder, his background has in the past was just building basically websites and mobile apps, both of us. And we both saw that we would deliver a product to a client who wanted to start a business. And then, 50% of the time or probably more, it just didn't go anywhere. And it was incredibly frustrating to us and the clients when we build something good and they paid good money. And then they just didn't do anything after that. They thought if you build it, they will come, and people didn't come. So that's kind of how we tiptoed into marketing. And then we did a little bit more of it. And now that's all we do is digital marketing. But I know that there's a lot more to running a business because I'm running this business here. It's not just marketing. And marketing to me seems like one slice of the pie. Is that kind of how you see?
Yeah. So the work we do is we look at a business, any business, big or small. It's essentially a system. If you think about it that way, right? So a business in totality is a system. It has all these moving parts, right? I'm not saying people are mere cogs. I'm just saying, but it's a system. It's a machine. And ideally the machine produces revenue and profits, right? Yeah. And if it ceases to do that, eventually the machine gets retired. It doesn't function anymore. So once you think of it that way, like a system, you realize, okay, having a great website is part of that system. Having content strategies, having SEO, that's all great. But what if those leads come into an incompetent salesperson or somebody who isn't really up to speed on what you're selling today, or somebody who doesn't really follow a sales process? So they're having all these conversations and you say, well, we're having 10 conversations a week on product X, but we're not having them very effective, right? So that's not what you want. So when you look at it as a system, what we do is we help you diagnose as a company what are all the moving parts that make up your system that actually allow, if you visualize it like a pipe, allow opportunities to come in one side, go through the pipe, and come out the other side as profitable revenue. So what else can stop that? And we call those constraints. So we help you diagnose what those constraints are, and then we have certain processes to blow those things up. It's sales process. Marketing process, we don't do digital marketing, but we might say, gee, it's really time you hire yourself a digital marketing firm because that intern you thought was doing a great job for you can't design for squat. And you're turning people away because your site just doesn't look like you're as good as your company is. So those are the things that we help companies see, and we work exclusively with business owners. So we don't work with the VP of marketing. We don't work with the VP of sales. We'll support them, but we only face off directly with the owner. We want the owner to be in our program. And historically, we would do that as a classic consulting, like I'd be a virtual chief marketing officer. And I still have some of those relationships. And that by nature is going to be pricier for some companies. So we designed the revenue throughput system, which is on our site at valueprop.com. It's the system. And it allows somebody to sign up on a monthly basis and kind of get into this process. It's not do it yourself. It's kind of like guided DIY. We're helping you along the way to make these changes. We'll help you diagnose it. We help you figure out what to do next. And then we help you actually implement the kind of permanent changes that makes your system more productive. And that's basically what we do. And that's the heart of what our program is right now. And what we primarily focus on is the revenue throughput system.
Excellent. So you said it's kind of like DIY, but with hand holding. Does that mean maybe like monthly calls or something like that?
Yeah. So there's 10 key process. Well, there's an initial diagnostic. So we'll do that one-on-one. I'll actually be on a call with somebody. We work through an app that we have that helps you diagnose your business. So we can identify what we call like the constraints, what's getting in your way. And it may not be obvious. I'd love to do that with a leadership team if there's more than one owner or an owner with some key trusted senior leadership. Because what's funny about that is the owner may have one perspective on how good things are. You really want to get those other votes in the room in that discussion. That's very rich, very powerful. So we end up with a consensus. This is what we're starting with. And then it could be 6 months, a year, you start implementing some key processes that are probably missing. And that you would join a session online, live. We'd walk you through it, give you the worksheets, all the stuff you need. And then we do follow-up one-on-one coaching. So there's really a lot of personal contact, but all the cognitive stuff, like the material you have to work through, we make that very easy in bite-sized chunks. So we've been asked, why can't we do this all in 60 days? I said, because you have a business to run. And, it's very hard to do everything in 60 days. We will focus on the critical path. What is impacting you most negatively right now? That's what we should work on first. So we help you prioritize that. That alone is very valuable to know what to work on first. And then from there, we just try to affect one major process change a month that you can absorb, digest, and make it part of your rhythm and your cadence. And that's how we work with clients.
That's really smart. It kind of reminds me of when people want to lose weight. You shouldn't lose weight too rapidly because it's not sustainable and the weight comes back on. And the rule of thumb, I think, is something like 1 pound per month, or maybe 1 pound per week. But basically, it's slow, right?
Right.
And so slow, deliberate change, and it may take longer than you want, but it's going to work, right? So I like the idea.
And it changes lifestyle, right? Like you start using that exact example. Yes, you can do cabbage soup diet for about 45 days before you get tired, never want to see cabbage again. Like a 500 calorie diet, and then you'll lose a ton of weight, and it'll come right back on. That's what happens there. Same exact thing. Quick fix. You have owners that are buying leads. Let me buy some email leads. So we'll do an email push and campaign. And those things, they may work a little bit at times, but that's not how it's done. And even I'm sure the marketing programs you put together are like systemic, long-term, things that are anchors that can work for a business for a long period of time. We'll just look at all the other aspects of the business that might also be undermining a great digital marketing campaign. Yeah. Like, do you have what it takes to do it? I've had customers literally tell me that, we were getting marketing, all those other pieces were coming together, but they had a fundamental problem actually delivering on time what they made for clients. I said, by problem, what do you mean? You're a day late, a day too? He said, no, we're 30, 40, 60 days late at times. I said, well, with all due respect, as much as we want to do this other marketing stuff, and it's really exciting because everybody gets excited. You get new logos, new designs. It's all kind of cool and sexy and fun. I said, but you got to fix this production issue, because if that's successful and you get twice the number of opportunities coming your way and you can't handle properly what you have now, you're just going to have a disaster and your reputation is going to be in tatters. And you forget about, you're going to have to rebrand and maybe like wear masks. I mean, it's not, of the hiding who you are category. So,
no, you're absolutely right. There's been several times where clients have come to us and they're like, hey, we're just not getting the new business that we expect from you guys. And so we'll dig into it. And a lot of times what will be happening is leads will be coming in. We'll see them coming in through like chat or form submissions. But we also see that they're not being responded to. And it's like, look, you guys are like, hey, I don't know what to tell you, like we're generating leads, but if your people don't even respond after a week, they need to be responding as instantly as possible. But if it's taking you guys more than a week to respond or not at all, forget it. Of course you're not getting business.
Well, I'll tell you, Eric, this is a pre-COVID example and may one day be again in the future, but it's trade shows. Right. So a lot of companies, especially in industrial categories, they feel they need to go to trade shows. Your average 10 by 10 at a Vegas show you're going to drop $50K soup to nuts, at least to just show up, right? And mind you, in a big enough show, you're in the corner booth near the men's room. That's pretty much where they put you
For 50 grand. Yeah.
for 50 grand. And I've dealt with this often, and I would say, okay, so what's the pre-show plan? Show me that. They said, what do you mean? I said, what do you mean? What do you mean? It's like, well, you don't have a pre-show. I said, are you reaching out to folks? Because trade shows can be powerful in that many of the people you want to speak to probably will be in the same geographic location for 72 hours, but they don't know you want to talk to them unless you let them know, hey, are you going to be there, and make it purposeful? That's one. And I said, what's your post-show plan? Do you have your thank you notes, your sequences figured out, any of that? He says, what do you mean? And again, what do you mean? What do you mean? I said, because what happens typically, especially smaller companies, maybe like an entrepreneurial sized company is 5 guys and gals, and they go to a trade show, they think that's great. They come back exhausted. They have 42 business cards and they don't really know what to do next. So then a month goes by, 2 months go by. And he said, man, now it's like a young couple getting married, not sending out thank you notes to Aunt Sally, and then it's embarrassing. Now that they didn't want to see Aunt Sally, and she thinks you've offended them. It's exactly the same dynamic. So thinking through all the moving parts is critical to actually having a sustainable revenue platform.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned the trade show as an example, because we have a second digital marketing agency, Rival Digital, that focuses on HVAC contractors. And we were talking about, when the world returns to normal, it would be a really good idea to go to an HVAC specific conference and get a booth there. And yeah, it requires a lot more planning than just showing up, right? And I'm not just talking about like the table in the booth, but in order to really take advantage of it, we were saying, well, okay, then we're going to have to, make sure we get into an expo where we get the list beforehand. Mm-hmm. And then we want to reach out to people. We want to offer them some reason to get together. We have a podcast at Rival Digital as well. So let's invite them onto the podcast. We can interview them live. We can have an after party. There's a lot of different things that we could do. But yeah, it needs to be done like that. Otherwise, I've seen the exact same results that you have. You come back from an event, whether it's a conference or just a networking event with a bunch of business cards, and they go up on your shelf and they stay there.
Someday they go into the someday folder.
Yeah, and at best you may reach out on LinkedIn. A lot of people they send a connection request on LinkedIn, and then that's it. They're done.
They're done.
It's not enough. So
right, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a lot more planning is required. So that's okay. So that's really interesting. Before I got a question about that, but I had mentioned Kevin Daisy, our co-founder here at Array Digital and at Rival Digital, and I mentioned beforehand that Kevin knew someone that
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I guess it's Jason Blevins.
Yeah, we did a training program for a company Jason was at. He was one of their top performers there, and we did probably for about a year, really some pretty important work there on sales excellence and stuff. So hello to Jason as well when you get back to him, Kevin. That'd be appreciated.
Yeah, hey, Jason, if you're watching, drop a comment and we'll bring it up here. So yeah, your reputation precedes you, which is great, through Daniel and Jason, and yeah, I'm sure a lot of other people have a lot of nice things to say. I'll be one of those in the future now that we've talked.
Oh, great. No, I appreciate that.
So, okay, so let's say you go into a business, you interview. It sounds like the owner, the management staff. You talked about like maybe some sort of like visualization. Well, sure. How do you show what's happening in a business?
Right. So there's, I talked about the pipe before, right? So think of that pipe having 8 major valves, right? So you open or close a valve, right? So that valve might be targeting. Is that open or closed? So, and there's questions we learn to ask about, like, who is the obvious, who is your target market? And usually the answer is it's this and this and this. And it basically comes down to anybody who can write us a check. And so, okay, great. I'm not saying you should turn down checks, but who's the target market? That's one valve. The next one is differentiation. How are you any different from the options that target market has? Mm-hmm. Then, of course, we look at marketing. What kind of marketing process do you have standing up for you right now? What kind of sales process? That's the fourth valve. But then we also look at leadership and risk mitigation. So, for example, if somebody were to tell us, yeah, we're proud, our biggest customer is, name a big corporate company, our biggest client is the IBM. And I said, well, how big are they? And, well, it's like 60% of our revenue. And I said, well, then you're really, you're looking to get hurt really bad. You're seriously exposed. And then things like resources. Do you have the people you need to execute your grand vision plan, right? And that manifests usually when people say, I know what I have to do, I just can't get to it. So those are constraints. And in production, can you deliver on your promises? And then lastly, fulfillment's the eighth pipe, or the eighth valve in the pipe, which is, how do you take care of customers so they want to continue doing business with you? Unless you want to be a permanent transactional business, you have to look at that. So that's the high level visualization. Our app actually will break each of those valves down to 6 dimensions, and we work through with the owner, explain the dimension, say how, and give them the criteria for scoring it. So it might be 2-hour sessions where we're working with their team, but at the end, you actually get a scored starting point. This is what your revenue throughput number is. And these are the red areas that you need to work on. And then we help you prioritize, because you may have 10, 12 red areas. Well, the fact is you can't fix 10, 12 things at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, you can walk and chew gum at the same time, yes, but but the critical path is maybe 3 items that if you have the staff to attack. But they have the highest impact on overall fixing the main thing, making the main thing the main thing. And this process, when we've done it as consultants or through our program, has never failed to generate some real measurable results. I mean, one company was a services business. They're about 28 million a year, stuck at that level. Nice size business.
Yeah.
1 year working with us, they went to 37 million and they sold the business. And that's that's I'm not saying like that's actual mileage can vary, of course, anybody doing this. But the principles are, if you got something good to sell, if you are providing good quality, then let's get the roadblocks out of the way so that you can actually make things flow through that pipe, get more opportunities, pay it off as more revenue on the back end.
Love it. This sounds close to critical chain. And I we either said critical path before, or I read it or something. Is there overlap there?
Well, it's interesting. So I read Elihu Gorath's The Goal, which is the predecessor to the chain, right? So that revolutionized supply chains 30 years ago. Yeah. And my MBA program was all based on systems thinking, of which critical chain was part of that. So it's not an accident that some of this stuff has flown in, realizing that you can't just, it's like if you're changing a tire, you can't just super tighten one lug nut. You have to go around. Otherwise, the wheel's sideways. It won't go in right. So you have to work it. Somewhat tighten it, somewhat tighten. Then take a look again and say, is my balance? Do it again and again. It's hard work, but you know what? The market will make that work even harder for you if you don't pay attention to it. The reality is, in other words, the market ultimately speaks the truth. What's going to happen, right? So if your customer service is poor, or customers feel that they can't get a hold of somebody, or your orders are always 10 days late, or your marketing materials are fuzzy and they're scratching their head and say, I don't understand what they do. And I can tell you how many, I'm sure you do it. You review a website and you go, I know what you do because we just spent 2 hours you telling me what you do. But if I only had your website to look at, I would have no idea what you do.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And it's all those things that we want to look at to get rid of those anything that closes the valve, because we want those valves wide open to maximize flow. Once you do that, it's not even about blowing up the business or starting over. It's attacking the things that are already there. Because most companies, most people hearing this podcast now, if you're in business, you went after something that you knew you could do, that you could serve a certain kind of customer well. And if you've been doing it for a couple of years, chances are you're pretty good at what you do. So, but chances are, if you're on this call, maybe you're thinking, well, gee, could we grow more? And that's what you have to look at, with some systematic framework to look at. Do we have all the bases covered?
Yeah. Kevin Clark mentions you must identify your market, recognize the demand and need, and serve your markets.
Amen, Kevin.
That's it right there. He had another comment, which is why I was smiling just a minute ago. Which this is my favorite. I appreciate it, Kevin. Yes, these are 2 amazing hairlines right here.
Thanks, Kevin. I don't know if I'm thanking you for it, but I'll be polite. That's all good.
That's funny. Well, cool. Hey, I wanted to bring up your book a little bit, just for a minute, and let people know if I can click the right button here. Yeah, here we go. So it's on Amazon.
Sure.
Value Prop Kindle edition. It looks like you get the paperback as well, but Kindle $0. Look at that. Yeah.
It's part of with Kindle authors. They put you into a program, like people as part of Prime and stuff. They get Kindle. So by all means, get the Kindle, but the paperback It was designed really to be like an executive read, visualizing somebody flying from LaGuardia to Logan, which is supposed to be 45 minutes in the air, but that could be a 4-hour flight. And you can get through it and get some core principles that you can apply right away into looking at your value proposition. So thanks for showing it on Amazon. That's where it is. And you know, it's been my joy that it's actually helped people.
No, I think it's fantastic. So yeah, if you're interested in learning more about what Jose has been talking about the last half hour, you can go to Amazon, get the book, just search for Value Prop. That's what I did. Or it sounds like they can go to valueprop.com. Is that?
Yes, they can.
Is there any other way to contact you? Social media, you on there a lot?
Yeah, absolutely. So Value Prop at Value Prop for Twitter, and also if you search Value Prop on LinkedIn, we have a pretty advanced page there, and on Facebook as well.
Awesome. Hey, Jose, is there anything else that you wanted to mention that I didn't bring up?
No, really, first of all, it's a pleasure. Thank you for, it's always great to have somebody interested in what we do, because as entrepreneurs, and I'm sure many people who would be listening to this podcast as entrepreneurs, as creators, as business builders, it can be a lonely life at times. And I know you can relate to that, Eric, as an owner as well. And so these little moments where you can actually kind of like just put a little light on it is exciting. So I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about what for me is my life work, is helping business owners conquer this mountain.
That's awesome. Yeah, you bet. Thanks for your time. And by the way, you just got another download from Kevin Clark.
Okay.
Kindle version.
Great.
All right. Hey,
Thank
take
you,
care. I
brother.
appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you.